So this is more with Bob Flitton. This is Rob Flitton, getting close to the end here. I used to remember when I lived in British Columbia that I benefited greatly, well, a few times, and I think my brother has as well, that everybody knew you. I couldn't go anywhere anyhow because we have the same name without everybody knowing you. That's quite a thing to be that well known. And in the course of your career, you got to meet a lot of really important people, a lot of interesting people. I think you were in the company once of Charles and Diana and prime ministers. And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, no, it's just been part of my life. I mean, national president of the Canadian home building industry. I got to know about 5 prime ministers. Got to know some of them quite well. Sat in meetings and discussions with them. Charles and Diana thing was Expo '88.
86?
Or '86 around Bill Bennett. It's just part of the life that I went through. But I have always networked. I've always got to know people. I mean, in Prince George, I knew everybody. Everybody knew me. Kamloops, I knew everybody. Everybody knew me. Victoria today, I mean, in Bear Mountain, probably the best known person in the community, or certainly one of them. It's just been a way of life that, you know, I think it's important to get to know people and have them know you and to try to better serve your community and make it a better place to live.
Well-known people also become lightning rods for alternative opinions too. You've had your share of naysayers.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you can go on the web and Google my name and you'll find horrific stories about things that I supposedly did, but you know, none of it's true really. It's anything I've ever done has always been positive and productive and well-intended, but you get the people at Bear Mountain, for example, they'll tell you that I somehow or other manipulated the government to make that project happen. Well, it had nothing to do with the government, actually.
And if you had to sort of pick 4 or 5 major magnifying moments in your life where you had big changes in how you thought or big changes in what the direction of your life were, what would they be?
Well, one of them was moving to California, and that's where I learned to network. I mean, when you're 16 years old and you're 15 years old and you're thrown into a school of 4,000 people and you don't know anybody, and all of a sudden you have to go out and start meeting other kids, you're learning how to meet people, right? And that's something that carried with me for the rest of my life. The work that I do with health, you know, keeping all my notes and records and everything, and then realizing how much advantage that has today in helping other people with health problems has been significant for me. Having George Crusoe offer me a job in land development in Prince George was a major event in my life. It just everything went uphill from then until I got involved in that plastics business in Spokane, Washington, which was probably the low of my life. The thing went bankrupt, it just didn't work at all. I've had a really interesting life, but to go back again and say the one most important thing I've learned in life is look after your money. Save, teach children to save money, even if it's 25 cents a day, save, and make sure your politicians are looking after the expenditures of your tax dollars. A lot of people today in Canada that like Stephen Harper, a lot of people that don't like him. I don't understand why people don't like him, because he's probably doing a better job fiscally of any leader of any country in the Western world today.
So let's travel way back in time for the last few minutes here. You used to compile notes of the Flitton family.
Yes.
And back in the 1970s, I think it was 1972, you traveled to England.
Yes.
And you went to the town Flitton and you sort of became interested in some of that history.
Yes.
What's a quick 2 or 3 minute synopsis of what you know about your heritage?
Well, I mean, everybody's interested in knowing where they came from. Once I found out where it came from, I lost interest in it. But the bottom line is that our family all came from a town called Flitton in England. And I found out that people in our family moved there probably somewhere between 900 and 1100. and they lived there for 300 or 400 years, 500 years, and then in the 1500s is the first time you see the reference to the name Flitton. You go out and look in the cemetery, for example, and there's no name Flitton until the 1500s. And I realized that what happened was we were a family of people that lived in a town called Flitton in England, north of London. And, you know, we were Rob and Jack. William was a common name in our family, actually, between 1100 and 1500. So, fellows, in those days, people had one name. I'm William, I'm George, I'm Henry. Then they got to the point where they needed a second name. So what they did was they would say, for example, I'm William of Flitton, and that's how they would identify themselves. And then ultimately the of got removed, so they became William Flitton. So the Flitton family, as a Flitton, actually originates in the 1500s in the town of Flitton in England. And we can trace our family history. I literally know every Flitton pretty much that was born since then, up until about 1940 or so, and what's been happening since then I've lost track of. Some of them moved to Australia, some of them moved to North America, some of them moved to South Africa.
Your grandfather's name was what? Ralph?
My great-grandfather was Ralph.
And he came to Canada in the 1870s, is that right?
1890s.
1890s?
Moved to the Greater Vancouver area.
With his wife, Letitia?
Yes. And then their son, Jeffrey Arnold Dean, moved over to Victoria, and then came back to Vancouver and got them and took them to Victoria. And they moved to Victoria about 1895, 1896, and that's where they lived, and my father was born there in 1908.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your extended family, your cousins and your maybe your two sisters, just a little synopsis on where they're at and their families, and there was a couple of cousins you had that are important to you.
Well, I have a twin sister, Betty, who lives in Port Alberni. She's well known up there, and her daughter, Janice and Valerie, and her son, Darren, all live in Victoria. Matt Pike is a development manager in Victoria, doing very similar work to what I do. He's married to Valerie. Janice is a lawyer. Darren in electrical. He's also a pilot. Frances, my sister, passed away from cancer. Her sons, Jeff and Jason. Jeff is in Vancouver. Jason's in Calgary.
Do you have a half brother or half brother?
Norman Robinson. Yeah, he passed away a few years ago. Quite a few years ago now, actually. He lived in Port Alberni and Vancouver most of his life, and he drifted around the U.S. Spent time a lot of places. He was a chef. A very bright young individual, but had trouble socially all his life.
Okay. So, what else do you want to wrap up with?
Nothing.
Why am I doing this interview with you?
That's what I'm wanting to know. Why are you doing this interview with me? You're trying to record my thoughts.
Well, back a while ago, I recorded your father and I lost the tapes, and I regret that. And I just think it's sort of interesting that with today's technology, someone 200 years from now or whatever, or 50 years from now, doesn't have to speculate like you were doing about the 1600s and 1700s. They can actually just go see.
I see. Well, that's interesting. Good. Thank you very much.
And we'll close with that. Thank you.